Hi, Andrew. Hi, Scott.
Hi, everyone.
Hola.
It's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us. Maybe give it another minute and see if everybody else is coming. Kate, do we know if anybody is not coming tonight?
Steve Roundtree is the only one that has said that he will not be joining us this evening.
Okay. Do we know who call-in user is?
I wonder if that's Ron. Ron,
was
is
get-
it you?
Ron, okay.
Is that Ron? Did you?
It is.
Oh, okay.
This is Ron.
Great, thank you.
I don't see Steve Carreau yet, but that's okay. We definitely have a quorum. So let's call the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. And Kate, would you call the roll?
Yes. Trustee Corvalin. Ron Mitchell.
Here.
Oh,
Thank
Tanya,
you.
yeah.
Danielle Kraus.
Here.
Catherine Vallon.
Here.
Scott Pappage.
I'm here.
Steve Roundtree. No. Andrew Dewart.
Here.
Steve Carreau. Barb Hart.
Here.
All right, thank you all.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments on the consent agenda this evening? I don't hear or see any questions or comments. I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
And Kate, would you take the roll?
Yes. Ron Mitchell.
Yes.
Danielle Kraus.
Yes.
Thanks, Ron. Danielle Kraus.
Yes.
Catherine Vallon.
Yes.
Scott Pappage.
Yes.
Andrew Dewart.
Yes.
Barb Hart.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions or public comment on non-agenda items this evening? All right. Don't hear or see any. Let's go ahead into our first agenda item that is informational. If we go through the reports real quick, my chair report is in the packet and I have nothing to add to it. Ron? I see the report for Ron in the packet, and I'm guessing he doesn't have anything to add to it. Although I know there's sometimes.
Ron, are you muted?
Yeah, were you muted, Ron, or you're good with what you sent?
Nothing to add.
Thank you. And the executive director report.
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Miranda, are you doing the town staff report?
Yep, nothing, I guess the only thing I have to add is last night, the Board of Trustees approved us adding in a new administrative assistant position. And what that will do is we will open up a public engagement manager position, post that internally, and do some kind of rearranging of staff. So a bit more to come on who will occupy that role. But for me, that's a very exciting development, having a dedicated staff member to focus purely on pushing information out and really connecting the community with everything town's working on. And of course, that person will be heavily involved in DDA, and we will support you in making sure that we enhance the way in which we communicate with the public about all the things you're working on.
Great,
We
thanks,
certainly
Miranda.
appreciate Peter's support, always pushing out RFPs or any other items that we have.
Yeah, that's been great. Thank you. All right. And who is doing the Netter Days update?
We actually have Peter on
Right.
tonight to do that.
Hey, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, so I just wanted to give everyone kind of a quick update similar to what we did last night with the BOT on the status of Netter Days. It is full steam ahead on our end. We're about just over 2 weeks out here now, and we have a lot of traction. There's a number of events that the businesses have been putting together. Like we have our 5K run. We have all of our ice sculptures, carvers ready. The Parks Department is going to be doing the sled course. They're going to set that up the night before, and Brian from Parks is going to be running it. Yeah, it's great to see so many businesses involved and just the variety of different events that they all came up with. So far, it's looking like a success, and we just ordered some merchandise that we can sell, and all the proceeds from that are going to go towards a park scholarship fund, which I don't have all the info on that in front of me, but I think either Miranda can speak more about that if there's interest. But yeah, any questions about where we're at or anything I can clarify?
Hey, Peter, this is Scott. I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
Could you repeat again, where is the scholarship funding? Where is that actually coming from?
So any of the merchandise that we sell, we ordered some T-shirts and hats and hoodies and things, and any of the profits from that will go into the scholarship. Also, we had some money donations from businesses that don't have a physical location but want to be involved, and that will also be going into that fund as well.
Cool, thank you.
Hi, Peter. This is Tanya. I was
Hi.
wondering, do you have a budget on what you're spending the money on? Like a simple
Yes.
document that you can share with us?
I don't. Miranda has been the one that has been tracking all of our spending. Miranda, do we have just a spreadsheet that we can share with that?
Yeah, I do. You know, we have a spreadsheet of our budget. So our budget is the 8,500 the DDA gave us, plus we received $2,000 in additional donations from businesses. So total budget for the event is 10,500. So far, we've only spent 3,000. A lot of the larger expenses will come on closer to the event itself. Happy to provide that breakdown. I guess it's just not very complete.
Well,
So I don't
what
know,
do you
Tanya.
anticipate costing more on the day of?
We'll pay all of our vendors that day. A lot of them want to be paid via check that day, handed to them.
Vendors? Who are the vendors?
You've got like Tri Productions, you've got the silent disco and the people doing the barnyard dances. let me get, sorry, I don't have this pulled up. Let me get to my Gmail account. We will use the full, so really our plan is to use the full 10,000 that we had budgeted, and then anything, if we end up being short, we will return the funds back to the DDA.
Right. Well, can you send us the, you know, what each line item is, what
Sure.
all the money is going, how much is the silent disco costing, how much is the barn dance costing, who are the people that are getting paid, their business names, that sort of information?
Yeah, do you want that now or after the end of the event? Because
Mm.
obviously, as Peter noted, it's still, things are still happening on the daily.
Guess at the end, I mean, don't you have like don't you know what you're paying people?
We do, but what I'm saying is we're still adding things in almost daily. And
Right.
so the budget is being
Yeah, I guess
amended.
maybe
almost
at the end would make more
daily.
sense, so we can
Okay.
overview.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy
Yeah.
to send you whatever you want now, if you'd like something now, and then again at the end. My hesitation a little bit is, if we send you something now, just know it's going to be amended slightly up until the date of the event.
Okay. I guess for me, after is fine, since we're.
Are there any other questions that I can clear up for Nighter Days?
Thanks, Peter.
This is Steve Carew. Sorry, just
Hi,
real
Steve.
quick. I don't mean to be frivolous, but I'm just wondering about the sledding down First Street.
Mhm.
Is that like just going down the middle of First Street? And do you have any idea where it starts or where it ends?
Yeah, so it's going to be down the center of East First Street in the main shopping area. We are going to close off the street around 10 p.m. the night before to prevent any cars from getting stuck in there. And Parks is going to build the course in the evening, so after it gets closed down. And the sledding will be mostly in the morning. It'll go from 9 to 11:30 with some, and then we're going to open up the course for anyone that isn't in the competition part of it after that. And we're hoping to have the street open again, I think 12:30 or 1. So it's not going to be closed all day.
Okay, cool. And do people need to bring their own toboggans, or are you
No,
guys providing sleds or
we
toboggans?
have 9 or 10 sleds, and we'll have safety equipment and everything for everyone to use.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, that sounds
course.
great.
Thanks, Peter. Any other questions from anyone on the board? Hearing and seeing none. Thanks, Peter, for the update. And let's move
course.
on to the Netter Days data request by Scott.
Okay, Barb, thank you. Guys, all this is, I don't know if you've had a chance to read it first. I don't want to talk over your thinking while you're reading, but this Netterdays, when it was proposed to us several months ago, had as one of its main objectives to draw people, both visitors and locals, to the downtown area and into the businesses for some business activity, generate revenue for our local businesses. And this is just a very basic, fundamental request, voluntary on the parts of the businesses if they would like to offer some just general data to us to help us see if there really is an impact from Netterdays versus the same weekend last year. And that was not the weekend that Frozen Dead Guy was going. It was the weekend after that. So we can really see, if there's any kind of impact from, excuse me, from Netterdays. It's all voluntary. I think we can promise to keep this information anonymous. Businesses don't like to share their info, but it's really, really fundamental, really easy. And I think it'll just be a useful data point. Or we've requested this from 15 different businesses in town. Could be 15 data points. Does that make sense? And any questions on this? Miranda's actually asked for this, so she's gonna captain this request.
Scott, I have a question. This is Steve Carew. I'm wondering if, and Miranda as well, I'm wondering if in addition to these 15, businesses offering data points year over year, if the town, Miranda, I don't know the granularity of your information for sales tax rev, but I'm wondering if you would also be running a report like for that time period, if you could do that.
So
Because that
unfortunately,
would be all business.
so yeah, sorry. Unfortunately, town can't because we get our sales tax revenue by the month, and there's no way for us to drill into one specific weekend to figure out what that is. So this is why
Okay, sounds
we're
good.
going to rely so heavily on the businesses themselves and hope. And the feedback I've received is like, no problem. We're happy to and excited to help. So I think.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure because that would be good
Mhm.
to see if they were in correlation or what.
Yeah, Reed actually tried. We really wanted that information for something else, and we're told by Department of Revenue that that's just not something they can provide to us because we get ours in lump.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Understood. Thanks.
I have a question. It says that you sent it out to 15 local businesses. Which businesses and how were they picked?
We sent them to the businesses that at the time in which I sent the email out, which was last Friday, they were the ones who had events set with Netter Days. So we were just initially sending the kind of FYI to events that were actively participating in Netter Days. I do see value in asking, of course, all businesses, whether they participated or not. It's good to know, but just sent it primarily to the ones who have events listed on our website.
We could certainly open it up and send it to more businesses. This is such a simple piece of data for every business owner really to hand over. I mean, I think almost all businesses, even if they don't have a POS system, they have a pretty good sense for what they sold on a given day.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
my feeling is, you know, as I note in my email is that, in the email that Scott helped we crafted is, we'll do an online form. And so I think in the online form, it will just ask a simple question of, did you have a specific Netter Days event? Just yes or no. Because I also think it's important for us to know, is there a difference? The problem with our business listserv is it's going to go to everyone who has a business license, even if you're kind of an out of town person with a business license. So I want to be mindful of not just like email blasting to email blast, like making sure that we're sending it to all the CBD businesses. And I'm happy to do that once we get a little closer and the form has been built to send another one targeting all the CBD groups.
I think it might actually grab good data anyways, Miranda, because like when I did the Frozen Dega Days one, we got a lot of information from businesses that were really successful, and we had a lot of businesses say what wasn't successful, but also what they would do differently, like not closing streets one way and other things. I think that it is important for all of the businesses on your listserv to at least get it.
Okay.
They don't have to fill it out.
Sure.
It's just data if they feel like filling it out. I know our business will not be open, so it would make no sense for us to fill it out because we won't be there. So, but I do think that it is important, and businesses that are outside of town that maybe don't have a brick and mortar, did it keep them from coming to town, or is there anything else that they would approve on just as a resident of the local area? I don't know. I think it's good to get as much information as possible, and I think that the survey that I did got a lot of that great information. And all you can do is ask.
Yeah. Do you have a recommendation of whether I send this like, hey, heads up, this is about to happen email, or do I just wait until we have the active link and then send it out?
I think send it a couple of days before the event and then send a reminder email the week after.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't, because that email that we sent out, Scott and I talked about maybe just giving the businesses a heads up and just see if there was any like, what are you doing? Why would you ask this of me? That type of response. And when we didn't get that, that was great. And so I agree that our next round, and I'm happy to do it through the whole listserv, is here's the link, and then we'll remind you afterwards.
I think the answer of I prefer not to share this information can be on any question you ask.
Yeah.
But they might share valuable information on 6 other questions.
Yeah, I think that we wanted to keep it really short and sweet and just ask a couple, point of sales information, but I do think, you know, as the Netter Day team, we'd like to a little like qualitative data as well of like, what'd you think? How'd you
Yeah.
feel about this? And ask those questions to start to get an idea of how people felt above and beyond whether this was a revenue generator, that kind of emotional side of it too.
Yeah. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence in years past, no matter what the event, no matter what, excuse me, what the event is, that it was really great or that wasn't great. And people have opinions. It's just great for us to be able to actually measure something and then discuss it later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to chime in. It's Steve Carreau. I agree with all that, and I think it is. I would just really encourage whoever is in charge of these surveys, you know, to put a few, aside from sales data, just a few other questions, like kind of like what Barbara was saying is, you know, how was this for you guys? What would you do different next year? Because this is the first year of a new event, and it can really shape the, you know, the future years. So like Scott's saying too, you know, every data point, it can be really helpful. And it can still be really short and sweet, but give a few sort of qualitative questions that might guide us next year.
I like that idea, Steve.
Yeah, Deb used to do that after NedFest and Frozen Dega Days and kind of all the events that she was part of. Used to send out a wrap up for the vendors and used to send out a wrap up for some of the businesses in town, and it's information that was invaluable in figuring out what to do next year. So I think it sounds great to me. Does anyone else have any questions or comments about this particular item? All right, hearing and seeing none, let's move on. No beautification, no Big Springs committee. I have an idea for that we'll talk about more later. Communications committee, Kate, any update on the website, or Peter?
No, not at this time. I still am going through Peter's feedback and making edits in that. So I'm working on it, but there's not any major updates at this time.
Okay, great, thank you. And Andrew, I'm assuming performance space is still waiting till the snow melts?
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank
If it does,
you.
hopefully.
And Danielle, you have your Public Arts Committee information in the packet. Do you want to add anything on to that?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And that brings us to Wayfinding Committee, and we're going to have that down in the action items. So let's skip that update for now. Is that okay, Steve and Steve? Or let's see, no, there's only one Steve tonight.
Yes, definitely, Barbara. Thank you. Steve Roundtree is out for this meeting. You're right. And
Great,
I see
thank
that
you.
Claudia is not on the meeting as well.
Okay. Great. Well, let's go on to the action items. And the first action item is the special event funding request. And Kate's going to bring this to us.
Good evening, everyone. I believe we have Gavin on as well. So I'm just going to go through the aim and then turn it over to Gavin to talk to us about his proposals here. So before you tonight, you have the grant special event grant funding for Ned and the Ned Gravel event. Funds are being requested for both events under the umbrella of Peak to Peak Endurance, a Netherlands-based nonprofit. And as I've included in your packet from the application, that they have been, Ned Gravel's been a boost to the downtown economy, and that the tax revenue was higher, and that they feel that they participated in that. And these funds will go a long way with increasing the exposure and reducing some of their other marketing costs. So Ned Gravel is requesting traffic control funding in the amount of $4,000 and marketing funds in the amount of $1,000. The Ned event is requesting traffic control funding in the amount of $1,500 and marketing in the amount of $3,500. The request is for a total of $4,500 in special event funding and $5,500 in traffic control funding. There is $10,000 available right now in the special event funding and $21,000 $28,050 available in the traffic control funding. These projects were approved as part of our 2023 budget. As a reminder, we moved the funding. The reason that the traffic control funding amount is $21,050 is because that is where the balance for Netter Days event came from, so as to preserve the special event funding pot. So if you're now, I'll shoot it over to Gavin to address the board if he would like.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Kate. So I just wanted to say hi to everyone. Our funding request is a little bit different this year than it has been in the past. One of the biggest differences is that we've been able to bring both events under our nonprofit Peak to Peak Endurance. Kind of the mission of Peak to Peak Endurance is to use these events, Ned Gravel, Ned, and a couple other smaller things that we have going on, like the Netter Days 5K, to bring money back and keep that money here in the community. So our events are geared towards making money, but that money through Peak to Peak Endurance stays here to benefit youth programming and organizations in the greater Nederland area, the Peak to Peak region. And so, as Kate kind of went through and mentioned, we do actually really believe that Ned Gravel specifically contributes a lot to the local economy. Miranda mentioned previously not being able to pull tax revenue data on a weekend basis, because we actually requested that from her maybe 2 months ago, trying to understand what our kind of economic impact is. But what they were able to provide is the monthly data. And starting in 2021 and 2022, the tax revenue in July was the highest it's ever been, at least in the reported data that we were given over the last several years. And I don't contribute that 100%, obviously, to Ned Gravel. July is typically a busy month, and it's always the highest month in tax revenue. But there was a significant jump year over year since Ned Gravel started. So I like to think that we were able to bring some decent business into town for the one weekend that we have. As Kate explained, we do have our funding request is combined with Ned and Ned Gravel. She advised that it may just probably be easier to combine it into one request, broken down into its separate parts, since we do run both events now. So, we could see it's a total of $10,000. That's going to go a really long way. And for Ned Gravel, it's going to go a really long way in helping us continue to provide really good traffic control and police enforcement. Our costs are going to increase significantly this year with the use of Boulder County sheriffs in town, as opposed to the Boulder Rangers and the Ned PD, which had a lower hourly rate than the Boulder County sheriffs do. So we are anticipating our traffic control costs being significantly higher this year. So the $4,000 that we requested is going to go a really long way in helping us offset some of that cost. Ned Gravel has a really robust kind of marketing arm through social media. We don't actually do a ton of paid promotion, but with this extra $1,000, we're going to definitely be able to do more kind of specifically local advertising and getting the word out locally to help offset some of those costs as well. The big need for the Ned is really getting the word out. It's such an incredible event, and we're really excited to have taken it over. Marketing is a big challenge for that event. That's why we requested a little bit more on the marketing side for Ned. We want to use that to just get the word out to, kind of locally here in the greater Nederland area, but also where the population is. So out to Denver and the metro area, because we believe that it really is an incredible event. Obviously, still benefiting Teens Inc. And the more people we bring up to run the race, the more money we're able to pour into Teens Inc. And so that marketing budget is going to go a really long way in helping to raise the notoriety of the Ned. Traffic control is not such a big issue with the Ned. It is a smaller race. It's a less busy time of year. There's less intersections and road crossings, so traffic control costs are a bit less for that race. But I would like to make sure that we have certified flaggers and all the signage and everything that we need to make sure the race stays safe and efficient for traffic use through town still. So that $1,500 should cover most of that cost for us. But that's basically it. You know, very appreciative of the support in the past that you've given to the Ned before I took over, and Ned Gravel for the last 2 years. Definitely a big thank you for that.
Great, thanks, Gavin. I think let's go around the circle on this one and kind of let everybody have an opportunity to speak. Tanya, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm just a little worried about the $3,500 in marketing and how that would leave us with only 10,000, and it's still so early in the season for all the other events that might need money. I thought that last year we kept that at like $1,000. I thought that was what we had agreed to do. I didn't know we were jumping it up like this. I think if we set a precedent like this, all the other groups are going to want the same amount, which I think is fine if we're willing to do a supplemental budget for that. If we think we have the money. I'm not like opposed to it, but I just think if we're raising the bar here, we have to raise the bar for everybody because everybody's going to want that amount for marketing. Because why wouldn't you? Marketing is really important. And I'm also wondering if there's any kind of budget here that we're giving that we can see that it's going to cost $4,500 or whatever for the police. Where's those 4,000? I mean, a lot. I know this race goes from Gilpin to Cold Springs typically. So I also wonder, is that something that we normally do, is fund for police in areas that are outside of town of Ned? I think we should keep it to, I don't know, I'm new to this. What did you guys do in the past last year for the Ned Gravel for I think it's kind of a big drop. Gilpin to Cold Springs is way out of town of Ned. And how much does this race? I know there's a band usually afterwards and a festival afterwards. So that's cool. Is that still happening? Gavin, are you still planning on having like a band at the park and everything?
Absolutely, yeah. So there'll be, we typically have 2 bands playing from about 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. or so, is typically how long our sort of after party goes. So actually, the majority of the bike courses go north of town. So they go from Nederland up to Gold Hill. There's one course that does go down into Gilpin County.
I thought one went up Apex Road, or
it does, yeah. So that's one of the courses. And actually, the traffic control costs for the Gilpin side are very low. Actually, there's only 1 or 2 highway patrol officers that we use south of town. So most of it, actually, the largest concentration is actually in town. It's crossing 119 at 3rd Street. It's the intersection from 3rd Street onto the Peak to Peak by Knotted Rue. It's the intersection from Caribou Road coming back onto the Peak to Peak. And so that's actually our largest concentration of traffic control. I submitted a report.
That is in town, so that's good.
Yeah, I submitted a report to Kate from where our expenses were spent last year.
Okay.
And let me see if I can probably pull that up real quick. And I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but
I do know that Teens Inc. for Ned received $2,300 last year. And it was $1,000 for special event and $1,300 for the traffic control. So that was for Ned and Ned Gravel. I just know that one off the top of my head. Ned Gravel, I don't remember, but Gavin did get the report, and let me see if I can pull it up quickly as well.
Oh, here, I got it right here. So
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so in total, we paid for Ned. We paid. Let me just add it up for you. We paid $1,300 in traffic control, fencing. Then we paid $3,700 for the flaggers and $1,950 for Nederland permits, Ned PD, and Boulder Rangers for traffic control. So in total, and that actually doesn't count Boulder County sheriffs and highway patrol costs that we paid. So all in all, most of the control, well, so to Nederland, we paid $6,900 last year for traffic control fencing. I don't even actually think that includes parking costs. So for flaggers, Town of Nederland permits, Ned PD, Boulder Rangers, and then like the traffic control fencing, cones, stuff like that that we used.
Gavin, that was net
So
net.
why
That was
aren't you
for Ned
investing
gravel.
more for the traffic control?
Well, keeping in mind, so I wasn't actually aware of specific numbers in terms of budget requests. But I was kind of keeping that in mind, knowing that I knew that there were some limitations to what the requests could be. So, you know, I wasn't anticipating a full coverage of the cost for especially traffic control. So that's the main reason why.
And I just want, this is Steve Carell. I just wanted to mention for the whole board, in case people aren't connecting the dots, that Ned Gravel, you know, the Peak to Peak Endurance has taken over the Ned. And as Kate said, we donated to the Ned last year at a certain amount. So just to keep that in mind, that these numbers, you know, while they're a bit high, perhaps in some ways, include the Ned, which was funded from us last year at a certain point. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thanks, Steve.
Sure.
Those are my concerns that we can address them later about the are we going to be able to get supplemental budget if we need to, if we're going to blow out this special event funding. There'd be only 10,000 left, which at this rate would just be a few events.
Thanks, Tanya. Let's keep going around the circle, and then I think we do need to address that a little bit more, but let's see what everybody else comes up with. Ron, do you have any questions or comments?
No questions or comments.
Great, thank you. Danielle?
Yes, thank you, Barb. Thank you, Gavin. I agree with Tanya. I'm trying to follow a bit. Thank you, Steve, for bringing that up about the Ned being taken up by Ned Gravel. I feel like we've had the $1,000 budget in place. I do remember voting on that. Did we vote on that after this event last year? Does that pertain to this event? I do agree that having a budget for situations like this is really smart, because any event that comes to us, I always want to support, but then we'd be out of money. But I also like that it's understandable that the whole event is not being held in Nederland. So if we stayed within budget, we could help out with the parts of it that are here in town. Or unfortunately, maybe not be able to cover all of the requests. But I would like to see what everybody else has to say also. It's hard not to just say yes to situations like this because they're so good to support. Thank you.
I do want to clarify that there is no formal decision that the board made that it must be 1,000, because you have veered from that in the past for different things, but it's just been kind of what, as you've always kind of thought about it as, and that we generally do give that amount, but it is not out of, and that's what I'm pulling up right now is some history for you, because last year in February, we had a similar go around with talking about Frozen Dead Guys Days, and that's the amount I'm trying to pull up for you now of how much we went into our budget at the beginning of the year, and we're still able to serve several groups. So let me.
So does that mean this isn't that application we had voted on? Am I?
But in that application, I don't believe it says that it can only be for $1,000. I believe that we kind of tell people that they can come to us for whatever, but we have granted more than $1,000 since that application's even been approved.
Awesome. Thank you.
It does that. I just want to, give that clarification for everyone here.
Thank you. Andrew, do you have any questions or comments?
there's, I mean, similar along the lines of, back in history when special event funding budget was kind of appropriated, just did we discuss, a maximum temp per event budget? I can't recall if we did or not. First, it's just kind of first come first serve, which is, like we both Tanya and Danielle touched on is, and believe me, I really appreciate Gavin, the presentation and support the event and want to vote, yes, but want to make sure that we're not, going back on anything that we may have laid out as far as maximum disbursement per request from previous meetings. That would be my only feedback. But otherwise, I'm in support of it.
Thanks, Andrew. There isn't
Yes.
anything formal that we said that it's a max of $1,000. There's nothing formal that way.
Great, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. And Scott?
Gavin, thanks for sharing what you're doing with this. I have a couple of questions. One, these two amounts that I see for marketing for these both events, are these intended to support marketing for next year's event for 2024? Or are these still needed to market for this year's events?
They're for 2023 events.
Okay. And that's to drive, I would guess, registrations for the events themselves, so people will sign up and participate.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Well, these two events, I think, are both thought to help generate local business revenue in town, right? That's the whole point of this conversation, I think. Would anybody here, how does this group feel about us possibly posing the same questions to local businesses post-event that we've just talked about for Netter Days, just to gain a sense of the economic impact of these events as well? I think this is something we should maybe think about doing for all the events that we support in town. Thoughts about that?
Scott, I think that's a great idea. However, I think that is on the event to gather that information, not on us to gather that information. I think that town itself, when they're doing these permits, should absolutely require that there be follow-up after the event and some kind of survey for any event that's this size, which is a larger event. But I don't think that it falls back on us to try to gather that, because then you would be saying, well, if we don't sponsor an event for some reason, an event happens in town, then they're not required to do it. I think it should be on town to ask that of every event that is going through town that is supposed to be more than X number of people.
I wouldn't argue with that at all. I just think that it's good for us, just as a general practice from now on, to try and, if we're going to try to financially support an event, we, as a town, it doesn't have to be DDA, it can be the town, I'm fine with it either way, but we as a community should be trying to get a sense for whether or not these events actually do what we say they do. Other than just being a good time, we'd like to know if they really do something for the town as well.
Okay, thanks,
For what it's
Scott.
worth, I did make a note of that because I actually do think that's a great idea, and we've talked anecdotally with a few local businesses, and we feel like Ned Gravel specifically is a boost for the economy. We specifically don't bring in outside vendors, so in terms of like food and beer and stuff like that, we buy as much stuff as we can here locally. Because we do want to support, obviously what's going on here in town. That's a big part of what we're trying to do. So, but I did make a note because I do actually really like that idea of having like a semi-formal like survey that we can send out. And that comes even from the town, or I assume I'll probably get one for Netter Days because I'm putting on the 5K. I could, mimic something off of that, but that is a great idea. And we would love to be able to pull that data and understand, our impact as well on town and how we can improve.
Right. And I appreciate you being open to that, because if we can, if you, for example, on these events can come back and say, hey, you know what? Like 75% of the businesses said this is super helpful to them, and here we can quantify that, then that's great for you and your event as well. Okay, thank
I
you.
wanted to jump. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Kate.
I wanted to jump back in with a little more history in case it helps with your discussion. Last year, we gave $2,000 to the Ned event, so it was $1,000 each. And then I was wrong, it was $2,500, not $2,300 that we gave to, wait, no, Ned Gravel, I'm sorry. We gave $2,000 to. The Ned received $2,500, and that was $1,000 for the event and $1,500 for traffic and safety. So I think, they've showed a lot of where these expenses, but I just wanted to kind of give you that's where the funding was last year, because I kind of heard those questions before. And then, like I said, we gave away $10,000. And I do remember a portion of that was $3,000. I'm trying to drill through into QuickBooks to find that real quick for you. How much went to special events that was above the Frozen Dead Guys days, like I referenced? Because, again, we had this kind of discussion previously, concern about going through and making sure that the money lasted. But I believe it was around $3,000 is how much we took out of special events. And I'm looking to confirm that.
Great, thanks, Kate. I think everybody else has spoken up. I would like to ask a couple of questions and just make a couple of comments. We did suggest that events ask for $1,000 for the event and $1,000 for traffic. Yeah, whether it's on the form or not, that was the suggested amount, and we veered from that greatly with Netter Days, and it still feels weird to me that we did, because that was a huge chunk of our budget. So we do need to think about other things that are coming up. We had other people that wanted to be on this meeting to ask for funding for special events, and our meeting is too full, and thankfully they asked to be on the next meeting. So we have a lot of events, and I follow the special event permits in this town, and Miranda can probably chime in on this. There's not just 2 or 3 more planned. There are a lot more events planned this year than we've had in the last 3 years. And I think that we need to be very cautious about what we're willing to give any event, and go back to the idea that any event that comes to us should be asking for that $1,000 for the event and that $1,000 for parking, if there's a parking issue associated with the event, so that we have enough to cover all of them this summer, because we're going to have a lot more people asking. And that's why we made our event budget a specific amount. And I think that it's really important for us to stick to that, so that we have that available for the other people that are going to come before us.
I will say that based on my background with running fund rounds for grant funds, I do think that something that would potentially help the board and might be something that you all could talk about in the future is having just certain times for applications, so that it's not this monthly chasing target, and that we don't really know sometimes what's coming, and then you have these feelings because you really do want this to be impactful for the community, and we all hear that. And so in my experience, running fund rounds like that maybe once or twice a year might be something we can talk about at some point, so that helps. I don't know how that impacts event planners, though, and things like that. So I'm not saying that it's the way to fix this, but I did want to bring that up, and maybe that's something that we can address maybe next, talk about addressing next year. Or maybe saying that we want people to think more and come to us, maybe midsummer or something for everything else. I don't know what that looks like, but we've had this conversation a few times, and I wanted to bring that up to the board.
Great, thanks, Kate. And it looks like Catherine has her hand up.
I am wondering, I don't know how many more events we know are going to approach us, but I think personally, if I'm planning an event, that I'm planning it more than 6 months out, and we're coming up on a quarter of the way through the year already. And, I don't know how many events end up requesting funding, say after September. I'm maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm overestimating how long people plan their events or something, but I'm kind of wondering how many more events we really rightfully expect are going to be trying to put themselves together in what's left of this year and how many we know about. And so that, we can maybe err a little bit on the side of caution, but I'd like to, I'd like to see good support for this event. I don't want to overspend, never want to overspend, but at the same time too, I don't see any value in budgeting the money to go to help these events that have proven to be successful and beneficial. And by the way, thank you very much for not only your presentation, but also for using local vendors as much as you can, Gavin. I really appreciate, I know it's not always the easiest financial decision to support local business, but I really appreciate that that's your goal. And so I just I don't think it really benefits us to end the budget and maybe not have spent all the money because we limited a known event to $1,000 because we were saving money in case of unknown events that maybe did or didn't ever appear.
Kate, can you answer that on just the ground of who you know or what other events we know will be coming before us? I can assume that the farmers market will come before us again. Wild Bear will come again.
Yep. We've already heard from Stephanie about Ned Food and Wine. That will be what's coming in April and May, or May. So I will say there's probably 4 or 5 people that have already contacted us about other events, and those are events that we funded last year as well. So at least, and I have reached out to some of those individuals just because I do want to have a better idea, because we do have this discussion. We want to make sure that we're able to support. So there are people in queue.
So I think that's why I'm saying we need to be cautious, because there are many more that are going to come, and people that have asked me, can they get on the agenda? And I have said, yeah, in April or May, especially if the event is in the fall. So we do have other stuff that is going to come. I'm excited that Gavin plans so far in advance, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them are like 3 months before the event. Can you make a decision so we can have the money next month so we can make the event happen?
All right, thank you. That helps put it in perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you that the farmers market will want to try and get some for Summerfest that's coming up in July. And honestly, we hadn't even thought about the grant yet because we're just still trying to get the staffing done. Fall will be another one. Then you got
Exactly,
Stephanie, that's 3. We got the Wild Bear, that's 4. Maybe I would imagine Deb Deandra with her cat event is going to want something. And so I'm worried about the 3,500. Believe you me, the farmers market spends that much in marketing as well. And so if we give 35 to Gavin, the farmers market's going to want that as well. So down the line, everyone's going to want it. So either we give it or we should ask for a supplemental budget like right away, so that if the money's there when people want it. I'm not opposed to that concept. Or Gavin could maybe get more in the security flagging aspect, where there's more money in that pot, and he obviously spends it for Ned from that budget from last year, and less in the marketing pot. Since that's just an idea, because anything's helpful. That because leaving only 10,000 is, if we only give people 1,000, it's gonna last. But you guys can do the math. So I'm worried about that, and maybe if Gavin wants to change it and ask for more in the flagging and less in the marketing, that might work better for our budget. I don't know.
And also, I just wanted to mention, and I know Ron has mentioned this before, DDA money has to be spent in the DDA district. So we can't pay for flaggers out on north of town. It has to be for money that is spent inside the town limits of Nederland. So there is a question there about, what percentage we can support by what percentage is actually inside the town limits. I know there's another event planned this summer that's right outside of town limits, and technically the DDA cannot support it or give it any funding. So,
It's got to be within the DDA limits, and the DDA is much smaller than the town.
right. Thank you, Ron. I was hoping you would chime in on that.
Oh, that really does limit things.
Correct. Yeah. So it can't even be at the community center, which is a bummer, right? Because that's so, but it's not in the DDA district. So our parks are in our district that are in town, and then our downtown district. So I think that also should be considered when we are having people submit proposals, is that it has to be in the DDA district. But that aside, I would love to have ideas, if anyone has ideas on how to move forward with this on a percentage, or to say, you know, what amount, or 1,000 this, 1,000 that, or whatever, so that we have a starting ground.
So, just off the top of my head, maybe 2,000 for each event for traffic control, and 1,500 for marketing or something.
So you're still talking a lot more than we're giving the other events.
Is it? Well, the 500
Yeah,
more.
a lot of them are getting 1,000 and 1,000, 1,000 for traffic, 1,000 for the event. So 2,000 per event.
I know the farmers market spends more than 1,000 on the flaggers and the police and the security. And I think we got a little bit more than that for Harvest Fest last year. But it is the issue of the DDA district, and that would have to be as when he has, like, the thing is that you guys made the farmers market, not made, but it requested that after the event, we give the canceled receipts for all the expenses. And so then in this group, for this event, it would have to be canceled receipts for flaggers and police within the DDA district. So that would, right? So that would be different.
Correct.
So that would possibly mean that it wouldn't even spend that amount of money.
Well,
I mean,
I'm
that's
sure,
the thing.
I'm
If you
sure
could ask for
barricades.
$4,000, but if you're only paying for flaggers, I mean, that's the thing. It has to be within the DDA, so that's town. And
Traffic can be also barricades. So if you were
Yeah.
putting up the barricades at the teen center for traffic control down there, and you had, something towards that. I mean, it really is easy to justify how it is in town limits. I don't think that's a question. I think the question is how much to give.
we
the
do
events
have more
when
money
we have others
in the
coming.
security. Sorry to interrupt. We have double the money in the security, so we must have thought that we would be giving 2,000 for security and fencing and all that, and one.
Except we redirected some of that also to Netter Days.
Right. Well, I just threw it out there. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
married to anything, but
But I think it's a great idea. Yeah. So does anyone have Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Barbara. I don't want to complicate things, but I'm not really positive that there is any stipulation that the money has to be spent within the CBD, Central Business District.
No, just
And I
in the
think that-
DDA.
Yeah, within the DDA district.
Steve, it's absolutely stipulated in the statute. This is
Really?
Ron.
Okay. Because I was
Yes.
thinking that it would be worth checking in after this meeting with Paul Benedetti on that. I just hadn't been
Yeah,
ever
do that.
aware of
Paul-
that as the chair.
Yeah, Paul Benedetti, that we've discussed that. No, it has to absolutely be in the district where the money has to benefit. Because we've asked him questions because Wild Bear, they've wanted to be supported up in Mud Lake. There's been the community center, and last year I went to him about this time and got that clarification just so that everybody could be on the same page and we could be good partners with Wild Bear. And that's why they've then brought us, a different way to support them, which is more at their facility, not at their event for the Enchanted Forest, et cetera. So we just found different ways around it, but we did look into that last year.
Okay, and so you did check on that issue with Wild Bear with Paul Benedetti about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. Then fine. I'm fine with that. I just didn't think that was the case, but it sounds like it is.
Thanks, Steve.
Sure. No problem.
Does anyone have any additional questions or comments? Is there any public comment? I don't see anybody online that maybe is raising their hand or anything. If not, I'd entertain a motion of some sort.
I would move that we approve $2,000 for each of the two events, sticking kind of with the traditional funding that we've given to be, half from each of the budgets for each of the events for a total of 4,000 to start. And imagine if if we get closer to the events, if something has come up that needs new consideration, maybe we could revisit this. But anyhow, that's my motion.
Great, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Is that Scott?
It is.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion? Scott, second.
I do have
This
one more
is-
question.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Thank you. This is Danielle. I'm sorry, I don't have a better grasp on it. Do I understand that Ned Gravel and the other one, these are traditionally in the past, they were two events and now they are one event?
There too.
Okay, so then it would be 1,000 for each event from each pot. Then it would make sense to have a total of 4,000, right?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Of course. Any other additional questions or comments? If not, Kate, would you take the roll?
All right. Trustee Corvallin,
I mean, yes, but I am open to giving them more money than that as well. But yes, I don't disagree with this.
Ron Mitchell,
I'm sorry, I'll have to abstain. I dropped out of the meeting for about 5 minutes here, so I don't know where we're at.
Oh,
okay. Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Catherine Vallon, Catherine Vallon,
Yes.
Scott Papich.
Could I hear the motion read one more time?
The motion is for there to be $2,000 for each grant request for a total of $4,000 to Ned Gravel or to Peak Endurance.
Yes.
Andrew Dewart,
Yes, and just to, I guess, follow the, I think, we should really discuss maybe a supplemental budget increase, and not to, deprive the peak endurance of things and back end it. But if, it seems like there's 8 to 10 events, and given what was given to Netter Days, having additional funds in this pot for this year seems like something that maybe we could have a discussion about later. But yes on the motion, and I think we need to talk about adding more funds to this budget.
thanks, Andrew.
Steve Carot,
I vote yes, and I also want to air a thought like Tanya had that I would have supported more for this because I think both of these events are pretty important for the town. And if it turns out that we have money left over and there is a supplemental budget for such things, I would have approved more. but I'm voting yes for this because I want to support them.
Thanks, Steve.
Barb Hart?
Yes?
All right. Thank you all.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Gavin. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all very much. I appreciate the support. And if there's anything else you need, if I could make one suggestion, maybe putting in the funding guidelines, making it clear that that money's meant to be spent in the DDA limit, and maybe even outlining what that specific limit is, because I didn't see that in the application guidelines. So for people in the future who may be approaching, that would probably be helpful information for them to have as well. But otherwise,
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you for your time, and thank you for your support.
Thanks,
Thank
Gavin.
you. All right, our next action item is the covered bridge funding resolution with Kate.
Okay. So I think the next item is wayfinding. Barb?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I don't know how
I
I got to
can
the
go
next
now,
one.
but I would like you to.
Yeah,
I
no,
would
we
really
can do
love us to
wayfinding
spend
next.
some
I
time
don't
on
know how
wayfinding.
I got out of order there. So wayfinding with Steve.
Hi, thanks. And I apologize, I didn't think to print out my aim beforehand, but I have it pretty well memorized. So the Wayfinding Committee is looking for feedback from the board as far as the general location of the signs and which signs we selected to move forward with on phase 1 of the signage project. And one other thing that Claudia actually brought to my attention just a couple days ago that I wasn't able to put in the packet, I wanted to mention here, is that with the Big Springs parking project, that brings a fair amount of additional parking spaces in one locale. So I would think that it would be good for us to direct traffic to that area on Big Springs for public parking. And if the board in this, in this presentation here agrees, then we would bring that to merge as one additional series of signs to direct people to that Big Springs bunch of parking that now exists. But otherwise, I hope everyone had a chance to get to the building there and look at the map and analyzed any information that we had written on it. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has before a vote. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Steve. Do we want to go around the circle with questions or comments? Is there anybody that didn't get up there to look at the maps? Seems like most of us maybe got up there. So let's just go around the circle and ask questions. Let's start with Andrew.
I appreciate all your work, Steve, that you've put into this. I don't really have any questions. I think it's a good plan, and love to see this keep moving. So thank you for your work.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Andrew.
And Catherine.
I don't have any questions. Thanks for all the hard work, Steve.
For sure, thanks.
And Danielle.
Thank you, Steve. Seeing that map was awesome. I have a thing for large format printing, and that was beautiful.
Yeah, and thanks to Peter too at
Yeah.
Town who printed that for us.
Yeah, it's great that that machine is over there now. That's great.
Totally.
It looks beautiful. Seeing that many signs planned out and the strategy that you're putting together to follow through with this, I feel really confident in the work you're putting into it, and I'm really grateful for all that you're doing. I didn't get to read through the booklet to see the suggestions. Sorry about that, but the things that you have mapped out here look great. Thank you so much. That's all.
Sure. And just real quick to respond to Danielle, yeah, what's laid out here is actually more than what we're thinking, at least, certainly for phase one and probably even phase two. Just so you know, it's not going to be all these signs because
Yeah,
we're
it
concentrating. Yeah.
was color coded, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I picked up on some of that, so just getting started on it's wonderful.
Great. Thanks. Sure.
Great, thanks, Danielle. And Ron.
I want to thank Steve for giving me a personal review of the map when I went up there to see it. I think it's great. I don't have any questions. I appreciate his work. And thank you, Steve. And let's move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, Ron. And Tanya.
No, I agree with everybody about moving forward. I'm wondering, I think earlier in the year or last year, you had said you were thinking it would be done, like signs made by September. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for, and I mean, it's still a possibility because the number of signs really isn't excessive. And I think this meeting is real pivotal for us if people, agree with the Wayfinding Committee's recommendations, then we'll bring them right to merge. And we'll have to have merge come out here to determine the exact locales. And then there still will be some more steps here. But I do see it possible, basically before late October, early November, when the ground freezes up,
Right.
is
Yeah.
our time limit if we were going to get them in the ground this year.
And
I think
the app is simultaneous, sort of. Does
yeah,
Merge
the
do
app
the app as
exactly.
well?
No,
No,
they'll
somebody else.
advise us and I think help us, a little bit with just sort of consultation, but they don't do apps and they've helped other towns with their own apps. But I think that the real key that I've gathered from Merge is, as far as the app goes, that it should just really reinforce the look and feel of the wayfinding itself and any maps that we might create.
Right, makes sense. So
Yeah.
I guess after the signs are done, then you start to look for the app people so they get the feel for the look. Is that?
No, I think because we've actually determined the look and feel of the signs pretty well, and there is another thing that Miranda might speak to better than I could, as far as the town wanting to do some branding, and that our wayfinding might tie in with that as far as the fine details of the look and feel of our signs, but that will address after location. So at this point, we're just determining which signs we should need and what the locations would be. And then the exact programming, I think, is what the term is as far as what the exact wording is on each sign.
Okay, thank you,
And
Steve.
then the look and feel will tie in with, with the town's branding if we get there.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm looking forward to it.
Cool, thanks.
Great, thank you. And Scott.
Great job on providing a really detailed and thorough explanation of where all this signage is going to go.
Thanks.
And those must have been your handwritten comments I was reading on the documentation as well.
Yes, yeah, that was the real crux of it, because we took merges, what they even presented to us as over programming, and these are like all the possible signs you might want in the town.
Oh,
And then our notes, it was my handwriting, but
yeah.
it was from our wayfinding committee meetings.
So
Yeah,
here are a couple
pare
of
it down.
questions that I have.
Great.
One,
Yeah.
So this is really a question for the whole group. So after hearing just a few minutes ago that the DDA doesn't fund traffic control for anything outside of the DDA district, now I'm sitting here, I'm kind of curious about potential funding for signs and signage at places like Mud Lake, Caribou Ranch Open Space, Hesse Trailhead, and those were all, I think on your map, those were like signs 126 through 135. Do we fund that kind of signage out in those outlying areas around town as a DDA if we don't fund things like traffic control for events that go out into those areas?
Scott, I think that's a great point, and I would definitely like to, have Barbara and Kate perhaps take that up with our lawyer as far as, whether that's permitted. And the good news for our meeting tonight is that those are all phase 2 or 3, so they don't really enter into what we'll be engaging with merge on immediately.
And I think Ron may have answered that question before as well. So I don't know if he wants to chime back in on it, but it was specific to being inside the district. So that was a question that we had talked about maybe a while ago.
This is the thing that's right on the borderline. It directs business into the district, and it's permanent. It's not a one-time deal. It's very long range, and I remember having a discussion, I don't know if it was on the meeting or not, but at length about this as to whether or not this would qualify. And I don't think we consulted the lawyer, but I think our consensus at the time was that given its permanency, given its direction to the central business district, that we passed it with those constraints. And the permanency of it was the bigger component of the decision. That's it.
And thank you, Ron. And one other thing I wanted to point out is that DDAs typically works with some, not typically, but they have worked with various DDAs who have also had, more major wayfinding projects than ours. And those were all funded through the DDA.
Okay.
Not.
Well, so our belief is obviously that putting signage up to Hesse Trailhead and Mud Lake, those help generate business here in town for our local businesses. I just want to make sure that we challenge ourselves as a group, that we really do firmly believe that those are helpful assets in helping the downtown businesses. And then my last question would be, I see the kiosks on there. I was not aware that we were going to continue forward with the kiosks and develop an app simultaneously, or not simultaneously, but in parallel, I guess I should say. That's a fact? We're going to do both?
Yeah, Scott, I wouldn't say it's a fact because we haven't finalized them all yet. But throughout the history of wayfinding, we've always had the idea of having kiosks at the major public parking spaces so that people would have just a very physical thing when they get out of their car to look at. And on those kiosks would probably be a QR code in addition to a map that would allow them to download that map to their phone if they wanted. So when they walk away from their parking space, they would have the app, or whatever the app turns out to be. So yeah, definitely the kiosks have been a key component of the wayfinding project since the beginning. And but we haven't done much to develop those, so it's not like it's a foregone conclusion. But that's certainly been part of an integral part of the whole wayfinding, is that we direct people with signage to the parking lots that we determine, and then we have parking ID signs in the lots with any rules for the lots, and then we would have a kiosk at the major lots so that as people are exiting the lot on foot, they would have a kiosk to look at whatever it is that we wanted to put on those kiosks.
And these are stationary kiosks, not digital kiosks.
Yes, and Scott, thanks, Barbara. That jogged my memory. Scott, maybe what you're remembering is that I think as a board, we pretty firmly rejected the idea of digital kiosks, and with the electronics and the weather issues and breaking down of a digital thing. So I remember having that conversation. And so these, for a long time now, the Wayfinding Committee has been feeling like these are going to be static kiosks.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Sure. And one more thing, Scott, I like the way you think, and I'm sure this is on your mind, is that we were going to design them in such a way that, should anything change on the kiosk, it's easy to swap out a panel. So they're going to be somewhat malleable over time.
Cool. That's good thinking. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, sure.
I don't have any questions or comments. I think that I'm really excited that we're moving forward, and the next step is for Merge to come for a site visit, and
Yeah.
and we approve this. If we approve this evening, that's what will happen. When would that begin, Steve?
Well, I haven't contacted Merge since I was waiting on this meeting to see, if the board felt comfortable with this set of signs for phase one. But Merge has been reaching out to us, I think, Kate and me, and perhaps you,
Yeah.
Barbara, as well. Just asking where we are on it. And so I think they're ready to move, and schedule a site visit would be the next step, where they'll actually, use their expertise and figure out, based on our general locations that are on this map, then they would really drill down to like the exact inches where a sign should fall. And Barbara, to your point earlier in the season, this would all be cleared through CDOT and the town, as far as locations go, and make sure that these are all, within right of ways, and that we have the legal right to place a sign in this position.
That this next site visit that Steve is referencing is what will allow those conversations with CDOT and town and signage and all of that. That starts this. And the reason for us making these wanting to get these decisions now is that Merge didn't really feel like they could come out when there was snow on the ground. So now we want to be able to say, hey, we've got this. So, get us on your books for when you can, as early in the spring. So that was the goal in getting some action at this meeting.
June 2nd, when the snow is melted.
And yeah, and Barbara, to your point, if this does pass and people are generally happy with the locations and which signs we've designated from the committee, then I would like to reach out to Merge and let them know that there really isn't all that much snow on the ground. There's drifts here and there, and there's storms that pass through. But I wonder, really, I've never delved into it with John at Merge as far as how much snow is too much and why can there be no snow? Why must there be no snow? So it could happen before all the snow really melts, but we'll address that, soon after the meeting.
Great, thanks, Steve.
Sure.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board? If not, I'd open it up for public comment. I don't know if we have anyone else still on the call. Doesn't look like it. And if there's no public comment, I would entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion that the DDA board approves the general sign locations for this selected signs for this phase, as noted in the documents attached to the same.
Second.
And Kate, would you take the roll?
Trustee Corvalin?
Yes.
Ron Mitchell?
Yes.
Danielle Kraus?
Yes.
Catherine Vallon?
Yes.
Scott Papich?
Yes.
Andrew Dewart,
Yes.
Steve Carroll,
Yes.
Barb Hart.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, just wanted to say thanks for making it over to look at that map. I appreciate your time to do that.
Thank you for having it up there for us.
For sure.
All right, that actually does bring us to the covered bridge funding resolution. Sorry for trying to jump the line there. And that will be brought to us by Kate.
So, as we discussed last month about the covered bridge project, during our 2023 budget process, covered bridge project funding was approved in the amount of $30,000 by the Nederland DDA board and the Board of Trustees. The attached resolution is needed to authorize the funding and make it available for eligible expenditures, which we discussed last month. And I was not able to get a resolution number. I apologize into the packet, but we do have it now, and it's resolution 2023-17, so that can be a part of the motion. So the attached resolution 2023-17 is for review and vote. And the question before the board this evening is, does the board support resolution 2023-17 and the funding of the NDDA covered bridge project?
Great, thanks, Kate. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this one? I know I don't have any. If there are no questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the funds for the covered bridge. Sorry, they need to be.
And Kate, would you take the roll?
Was that Danielle that, sorry, I just need to clarify. Was that Danielle that seconded?
Yes.
Thank you. And I will call the roll now. Trustee Corbalin?
Yes.
Ron Mitchell?
Yes.
Danielle Kraus?
Yes.
Catherine Vallon?
Yes.
Scott Papich?
Yes.
Andrew Dewart?
Yes.
Steve Carroll?
Yes.
Barb Hart?
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. And the next item is our master plan work session. I've just been reading through the master plan again as the town is going through a lot of updates and changes and looking at their overall plans. And I thought this would be a good time for us to do the same, kind of look at what we have accomplished in ours, what's still out there, what maybe we don't want to pursue as a board down the line. And I feel like it would be great for us to have a work session and all get together outside of a regular DDA meeting and just read through it read through it ahead of time, please. And then come to the work session with ideas that we can kind of start thinking about for next year and cross some things off of our list of what we have already done. So I'm wondering if everyone would be open for a work session in April. And we included 3 dates on there. Those dates are dates that have been verified would work with town for us to have a work session. I do feel like this would be better off if it was an in-person work session, but of course hybrid is a possibility. But I wonder if everybody would look at their calendars and see if any of those dates look better than others for us to go ahead and get that on the books. Does anyone have any questions?
This is Danielle. Is this via email that we respond about the dates?
We could, or you could say if any of those dates work for you or don't work for you specifically?
I don't have them right here in front of me.
Okay.
I will be taking a trip in April to Pennsylvania. I had not planned on bringing my computer, but if it's hybrid, I could have my phone with me. I don't know when I'll be getting back just yet, so kind of confusing for my participation.
Okay. Would it be better for everyone if Kate sent out an email that you guys could all respond to in the next couple of days so we can just pin it down and get it on the town calendar?
Yes.
Barb, could you share those 3 dates with us while we're here on the phone together?
Absolutely. They are Wednesday, April 5th, Wednesday, April 19th, Tuesday, April 25th. Email. And those aren't set in stone. It's just looking at the town calendar with conflicts of other things. Wednesdays seem to work well because we already meet on Wednesdays. Tuesdays are harder for me personally, but I could make one work. But if there's a better day, everybody says, Thursday is better, that's fine too. Just Kate can send out an email and we can pin it down to have as many people as possible able to attend that. So we can move forward on it.
I'm assuming that Tuesday is not a BOT meeting day.
Correct. This is your BOT is first and third, and the work sessions are second if you have them. So this would be that off week on the 4th week of April.
I personally think I could make any of those work off the top of my head.
Great, thank you.
Me as well.
Okay.
This is, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Barbara, if you could send a doodle poll, I can respond to that. But otherwise, I know that the first 2 are better than the third choice for me.
Okay, either Wednesday.
Yeah, the earlier 2 dates work better than the last one.
Okay.
And so I'm
out of
intent
town.
on,
I'm out of town the first one, but the other 2 work for me.
Out April 5th. Okay.
Well, here, does 419 not work for anybody? Because I'm hearing that as a consistent time that might work. So does 419 not work for anyone?
that doesn't work for Scott.
Okay.
That's up in the air for Danielle.
Okay.
Okay. So maybe Kate, I can check in with you
Yeah.
tomorrow and we can, or Friday, and we can just touch base with Miranda and come up with maybe 6 options instead of 3 that we could put out there and see how many people we can get at one of them. So
okay.
Yeah, I definitely want to make sure as many people as possible are able to attend this one.
Well, then why don't we look to May? And so then it's a little bit farther out, beginning of May. I'll include those dates. We'll circle back, but we'll include those as well.
Okay, add some May dates, check with Miranda, got it. Great. That sums that one up. Go back in my packet here. Which brings us to our discussion item. And this is the plastic bag fee, and this is going to be Miranda.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So we recently were talking, let me first. We have Leah Haney on with us, who is our new sustainability coordinator. And I'd love to first Leah, do you want to just say hello and introduce yourself before I dive into this? I don't know if she's there, but if she's there.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Leah, the new sustainability coordinator.
So Leah took over for Erica, and Erica is now the sustainability manager with the town of Erie. So back in December, we were talking with the Sustainability Advisory Board about the plastic bag fee. And in the AIM, I kind of went over what are the statutory requirements for the plastic bag fee. You know, what's really unique about the plastic bag fee right now is the majority of our stores, as they're defined, do not fall into the category of stores that needed to comply with this bag fee back on January 1st, 2023. And actually really don't, a municipality can choose not to apply this, you know, to small stores. However, the town already has a plastic bag fee. We've had an ordinance for years. In 2015, the Board of Trustees adopted Ordinance 737. However, it is my understanding at the time that there was some pushback and it never got fully executed, really never got off the ground. And therefore, while the language for waste minimization is in our code, it is not actually enforced. And so one of our questions before the DDA that we're looking for feedback on is whether you think, you know, in kind of knowing that this is slowly rolling downhill, the town should revisit reinstating that plastic bag fee. There are stores like the B&F that of course do have the plastic bag fee, but the difference there is they're not required to remit the fee to the town. They choose to remit the fee to a nonprofit. So if we reinstated our plastic bag fee ordinance, it would require that the stores remit 60% or potentially more to the town of Nederland. And we could update the ordinance to indicate what those funds would be reserved for. That's kind of question number one before you. Question number two, though, is retail food establishments, and there really is no definition of size, so we determine that all retail food establishments will need to comply with moving away from styrofoam to-go containers effective January 1, 2024. And so we're really wondering too, you know, if the sentiment is let's go ahead and move forward with the bag fee, should we also put into place the prohibiting the use of styrofoam and really work with businesses to start to move away from using that product? There are only a handful of businesses that do use styrofoam products, and so I'd say generally Nederland has done a great job of moving to compostable or recyclable containers, but there are a few out there still floating around. And so we're just wondering why I was asked to bring this to the DDA was, of course, your connection and representation of businesses. What do you think we really need to consider regarding both the plastic bag fee and the banning of styrofoam? And do you think it's worth pursuing sooner than later? Those are my questions, Barb. The 2 questions before the board. You all can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question.
That's
I have
like-
a question, Miranda.
Yeah.
Can we enforce the ordinance, but allow businesses to continue to give to the nonprofits that they've been giving the fees to? I like that.
Sure. We
Personally.
definitely can look at that as an option instead. The way our current ordinance reads, it does require payment to the town. Again, because of the way a store is defined, it's really unlikely that we ever need to go to the level the state statute reads. So we have a little bit more wiggle room there on what our ordinance might look like.
I mean, me personally, I like to keep that option open because all the nonprofits sure could use a little help. Maybe local nonprofits, we could say, or I don't know if we want to get into that details. There might be a nonprofit that the owner of the store is really, you know, interested in because of maybe a family member history that isn't local. And I don't know if I want to, I just want to put that out there. I don't know how we want to tweak it, but.
Yeah, my initial thought is like, that's going to be tough for town to regulate. And so if it's just kind of this like open faith feeling of, you know, you're just going to do the right thing, because it would be tough for us to figure out like,
Sorry, you know, they could send at the end of the year, we gave this amount of money to this amount, and they could have a little sign on their door or whatever. So we could ask them to do that, keep track of it.
Yeah, that's
Just
definitely
something
something we
to
can
do.
explore.
Otherwise, I'm in favor of enforcing both.
Okay. Catherine?
Yeah, I definitely am in favor of enforcing both. And I had another thought. It goes back to, I guess, back in the day when I was going around with my son when he was looking at colleges and ended up becoming a sustainability major. They used to offer for sale at several of the colleges and through some of the restaurants in various college towns. If somebody chose instead to buy a reusable to go container that they could take home, put in their dishwasher, bring back to restaurants and stuff like that. And I wonder if the town would be interested in maybe purchasing some of those and putting them for sale, for potentially for sale in the restaurants that chose to participate with that so that they didn't have to, get as many single use containers. But I'm
Yeah.
anxious to see the town get rid of plastic and styrofoam any way they can.
That's a great suggestion, Catherine. And there is a local company that is doing that. And so we're looking into the funding. We'd probably have to cover that in the front end for businesses. But yes, that is on our radar also.
Yeah, and I do want to just jump into, Catherine, we actually applied for a grant, and a lot of the research that's in your agenda packet is from that time. And we were applying for funding just exactly for that. And unfortunately, we're not selected. So I'm hoping Leah, and kind of this next round we're going for, we could be, because, of course, with anything, our goal would be if we're going to enforce compliance, we want to also help the businesses be successful in doing so. And that was really big for us of how can we provide the containers or support with that as they need to transition. Scott? Barb, I hope you don't mind. I'm just calling on people.
Well, and I want to ask one potential challenge. Does anyone see an additional cost from having to replace styrofoam?
I don't know if Scott, you want to go next because your hand's raised and speak to Leah's question too.
I don't have any idea if there's an extra cost. We can address that shortly, I guess, or we can explore it. I would just like to provide two comments on this. One, everything about moving away from styrofoam and trying to discourage plastic bag use, everything about these two regulations is exactly in line with everything that we have said we are about as a town and a community for a long time. And I think it would be awful of us to not enforce both of these regulations. Regarding the nonprofit contribution side of it, I think that everybody should be encouraged to make the contributions they want to make in life to any nonprofit they care about. I don't think that we should be using laws to allow people to make those contributions on their own personal basis. I think that we should just enforce these two regulations as they are, as they're intended to be.
Thanks, Scott. Steve?
Thanks. Yeah, I had two comments. I like Scott's idea, that it is a little bit odd to enforce donations to a nonprofit, but a simple solution otherwise to achieve the same aim, if we wanted, would be to require that the businesses pay this to town, and that way it would be accountable to some degree. I guess it's self-reporting for the most part.
Yeah.
But still, if it went to town, then town could make a donation of that money. It doesn't mean that it has to come into its own coffers. So that's one sort of way around that, where you're not forcing individual businesses to donate to a nonprofit. And then the other thing, to Leah's point, is there is a cost. Styrofoam is ultra cheap and it's ultra horrible for the planet. So I think that, I'm not a business that uses to-go-ware and uses styrofoam and all, but I have looked into it in different formats. And I think that cost differential between a compostable item and a styrofoam item is you know, it's not that large. And if you're thinking of the cost of the food that would fit into one of those things as a percentage of the cost of the food, it's a tiny percentage, the differential between those two to-go wares. So I do feel like what everyone else has said, that we should enforce this if at all possible. It's in line with our stated goals forever in town. And it is a minimal, I do feel like a lot of times businesses worry about, you know, every little cost, and we all have to be cost conscious. But I think it is a very small cost differential in a small percentage of the overall cost of providing food to people in a business. So without crunching the numbers, I do think that it's not going to be a, you know, a big burden on businesses, even though it might seem like that to the businesses.
Yeah, and one thing I was just going to add, thanks, Steve. You know, when Tanya was talking, you know, that's what we do with our occupational tax. Is our short-term rental lodging tax goes to Health and Human Services, that then subsequently gets distributed for Health and Human Services purposes. The ordinance could read very similar, where town would then, you know, and obviously town, you would work on this with the board, but town distributed these funds to nonprofits of certain types, and they could apply for them and do a similar structure to the occupational tax, just with this funding instead. So it doesn't have to come sit in the general fund. It could continue to move out to a nonprofit. I don't have any more hands on my end, Barb, so I don't know. Steve, though.
Great. Well, I'm in support of both of those measures.
Why not use some of the money to actually fund the reusable to-go containers you're talking about? Is there some reason not to maybe at least explore that option?
Yeah, no, we definitely, I mean, typically these do, this is fund like would go to a municipality's general fund. And so really, I think we're open to consideration of what the best use is, and perhaps it is that for year one. I mean, that could always be changed, like the occupational tax. Every year, the board has to decide how they want those funds distributed. This ordinance could read similar, where it could go to reusable containers or nonprofits, and the board could evaluate that every year during budget season, because we'll be able to have a general estimate of how much money we anticipate bringing in under the plastic bag fee. Danielle?
You. I have a crazy thought, and Tanya, maybe you could help answer it in making reusable containers. I know that kind of similar to Very Nice Brewing, how they have their awesome mugs for patrons who are there most frequently and for a certain amount of time. I wonder if we could find some of our local potters who could create vessels, and maybe then we could order types of lids that would fit them. And a lot of the people who frequent the establishments over and over and over are locals, and I think that would encourage a lot of local participation. Though I know that custom made stuff like that can be very expensive and time consuming. It just keeps popping into my head. And the idea of bags, I know that one of our locals at Trace Gringos, Carrie, she has been reusing her feed bags from her animals and creating bags and selling them at some of our retail shops. So there's a lot of creativity. I know with food, the cleanliness has to reach a protocol, but those are creative ideas coming from the art department here. And as far as donations for local or just nonprofit, like somebody with my income and expenses, I really appreciate the opportunity when I go somewhere, having somebody say, hey, here's an opportunity to donate to a nonprofit. I definitely give every time I'm presented with that. I think it's a great idea. And the sooner rather than later, I think is really good too. So thank you for working on this.
Thanks, Danielle. Barb, I'll let you do the rest.
I can answer about the pottery. And yes, you can make mugs that fit silicone lids that pop over the top. And you can make a mug any size. You can make it needs to be tapered so that it fits in cup holders. And so, yeah, that's possible. It would be a cool option, and it could be something sold at the visitor store maybe, or I don't know how the whole program, I mean, like some coffee shops already have, handmade mugs you can buy and all that, or stainless steel cups you can buy. So I'm not sure how the program would work with the Nederland reusable containers that people would bring in, how that would differ from someone bringing in a Tupperware. And I think, and I don't know, I wish we have asked people from the restaurant industry, but I think they don't like that because of the hygienic aspect of it. But anyway, it would be expensive to have the pottery mugs, more than the stainless steel ones, probably. I mean, at least $12 a mug, I would imagine. All right, that's all.
Thanks, Tanya. Does anyone else have a question or a comment? I can only see like 4 at a time, so if I'm missing anyone, it's not intentional. That's all I get on my screen.
Well, maybe I could just go over next steps too. So based on the feedback it seems we have from this group, we would go back to SAB, begin to kind of draft that ordinance and bring it back before the Board of Trustees. I don't know if the DDA feels like we need to bring the ordinance language back before you all. We're happy to, or we'll just kind of keep working between SAB and the BOT. I don't know if there's feedback on that.
Can I just ask Miranda, because the difference in time here of, do we want to ban this now versus January 1st, 2024? Some of the businesses in town might have 6 months worth of stock in the business. So I don't know that January 1st, 2024 is unrealistic. I think offering to them that this is going to be coming up and we're really going to start doing this on January 1st. Is there anything that we can do as the town to help you get to that phase, so they don't order the next round of whatever from Cisco or wherever they get their stuff? But I think like saying now might be hard on some of the businesses, especially going into our slowest 2 months, which are April and May.
Yeah, that's a great point. Absolutely. And I think we could do definitely targeted outreach, since we don't have a ton of restaurants, and just let them know this is coming down the pipeline. I think that's a great idea. Yes. And I agree, even an ordinance does not happen that fast. So when I say now, there's no way that'll be now. We're looking still a couple months out, but we could ask for compliance. We can at least reinstate the bag fee though pretty quickly, because that's an ordinance we already have. So it's just a matter of choosing like what is our reinstatement date, and then letting people know about compliance. We'd obviously want a very robust campaign to let the community know this is something we are looking for compliance for, and it would be all businesses. So again, because the town already has the ordinance that was in place long before the state statute change, we can enforce our ordinance on all businesses. But again, I know like the 2 largest have converted, or I believe ACE, they want you to bring their own bag. So when this came forward, the state law, a lot of businesses already started making the amendments anyways.
Great, thank you. So what direction are you looking for from us this evening?
I think I got it. I saw Catherine raise her hand, but it was really just like, do you like this idea? If so, we'll keep going.
I was just going to suggest, again, being mindful that none of us are restaurant owners here, and that Barb made a good point that some of them may have already bought a whole bunch of containers. And so giving them early notice that we're intending to do this, so please keep this mindful for your next order. And, maybe if there's some tiny pot of funds somewhere that could be considered for access, if there ends up being the potential for a buyback. Like if somebody, said, oh crap, I already bought a year's worth of to-go containers and they're all styrofoam. Like we said, they aren't very expensive. Maybe we could consider them giving a grace period to a certain point, or giving them some kind of an incentive, a partial buyback of any containers they would just relinquish and replace.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. All right. Does that give you all the direction you want, Miranda?
Yeah, I guess does the DDA want to see this come back for any reason, like the ordinance language, or are you kind of feeling fine that if you want to chime in, you'll just do it on the BOT or SAB level?
I'd love to see you put it in a staff report down the road.
Great. Will do.
All right. If there are no other questions or comments, that brings us to the end of our regular meeting, and we're going to go into executive session. And Miranda has to control this so that we're down to just our board.
Yeah, so once you read the top part of that script,
Yep.
I'll start locking everything down.
Sorry, looking at both pieces of paper. I would ask for a motion to move into executive session.
I move that we go into executive session.
So Barb, sorry,
Oh, I'm sorry.
will you make the motion and then Catherine can second it, so that way you have the exact language there.
Okay, an executive session pursuant, that part.
Yeah.
An executive session pursuant to section 24-6-402 4F to discuss matters related to the executive director position and for which the employee has consented to the executive session discussion. Now I would make a motion that we go into executive session.
Second.
And then Kate can call the roll.
Great.
Okay. Trustee Corbett? Ron Mitchell?
Are they still here?
Yeah, Ron, I texted you. You have a lot of feedback, so you end up muted. So you'll have to unmute yourself. I believe he's still there, just on the phone. But
I see him.
yeah.
Yeah. Danielle Kraus?
Yes.
Okay. Catherine Vallon?
Yes.
Scott Papich?
Yes.
Andrew Dewart?
Yes.
Steve Carreau?
Yes.
Barb Hart?
Yes.
Ron Mitchell?
He seems like he's still there, but can we move in without, we have quorum, correct?
Yeah, we will need to be able to hear from Ron.
Yeah.
Let me just kind of, for you all, we're about to lock the meeting down, but we either need everyone in this meeting to turn on your cameras to provide confirmation that you are alone, or if you can't turn on your cameras, to provide verbal confirmation. Preference is that everyone turns on their cameras if they can. And then we would really just need to find out from Ron, is he alone or not? So Ron, are you able to unmute? Otherwise, I'm probably gonna, unfortunately, Ron, I'm probably gonna have to kick him out, and then he'll just come sit in the waiting room when he's ready to call back in. Okay, Ron, I'm gonna have to kick you out, but text me or call back in.
And then Miranda,